Hey, what's up, guys? Today I wanted to talk about spaced repetition systems. Um, if you haven't heard of this, spaced repetition systems are really useful. Um, Great way of learning new vocabulary. And since we're doing the 21-day vocabulary challenge at the moment, I thought this would be the perfect time to bring it up and talk about this and kind of discuss it. See what's worked for you guys, what's been working for me. Have a community discussion about it. Also, I think that if you're new to language learning and if you're not really sure what spaced repetition is or how useful it is or what the benefits of it are, I think a lot of people are missing out if they don't really understand the power of spaced repetition, because it really truly is a very powerful tool to have in your language learning vocabulary, in your language learning what would you say, a toolbox. Okay, it's another tool for just learning mass amounts of vocabulary efficiently and well. And it's also something that applies from the very beginning of your language learning career when you're in A1, and it can scale all the way up to the very end, C2. You can use spaced repetition systems in your native language to improve your vocabulary. So this is a system that works regardless of your level. Now, spaced repetition is not magic, okay? You have to work for it. But the best way I can describe it, actually, I heard someone else describe it this way, so I'm kind of stealing it from them. But they compared it to that thing in the Matrix where Neo comes out of the Matrix and he's in the ship, then Nebuchadnezzar, and they hook him up to this computer. All right. And then one of the guys, I don't remember, one of the crew members, what are their names? Tank or something? It's been a long time since I've seen The Matrix. He pulls out this floppy disk or some kind of storage device, plugs it into the computer, uploads the information into Neo's brain. And then when Neo wakes up, he opens his eyes and goes, "I know Kung Fu." All right. Spaced repetition is the closest thing to that. Like I said, it's not magic. You do have to work for it. You do have to put in an effort towards learning the vocabulary. But it's the most efficient means of learning vocabulary that I've found. It's efficient for learning just mass amounts of words, which is really important at the beginning, because when you first start learning a language, you're just being bombarded by all these new words that you just need to memorize just by rote. Because otherwise you won't be able to understand anything if you start with 0 words. I find spaced repetition, memorize specifically, is what I usually use. I find it to be very useful for quickly picking up a ton of the words that I just didn't have any of before. As you work your way up through the levels, through, A2, B1, B2, C1, it doesn't become less useful, okay? Because you're always trying to learn more advanced vocabulary, all right? At the beginning, it's really exciting because you're just learning all these tons of really useful words that you're going to come into contact with every day, every time you use your language. As you move up through the levels, you're going to have to start learning slightly more obscure words, slightly more advanced words that you're probably not going to use every single day, but they're just as important for being able to hold fluent conversations. Right now, I'm learning advanced French and unmemorized. And, I'm learning words like, oh gosh, what are some of the words that I've been working on right now? I do practice every night using memorize. Gosh, none of them are even coming to me right now. One of the words I've learned is I'm just totally blanking on any of the words. Oh, well, anyways, no, that was a word I was learning in Spanish. Gosh, I don't know. I'm going to have to look this up now. Memrise.com. It's kind of embarrassing. I just get nervous when I'm live streaming. That's why I can't. My brain doesn't always work. Rapporter, régler, les soldes. Actually, les soldes is a word that I learned in France this summer, because when I got there, there's all these big sales going on, and solde is sale. Le problème d'alcool, a drinking problem. Le problème aigu, a hot issue, I guess. La peine de sûreté, words that you wouldn't come into contact with all the time, unless you're specifically using some kind of spaced repetition system for learning. But it's strange how often they start to come up once you've learned that word. Hello, Beau de Tam. Thanks for joining. Appreciate the comment. You have a nice day as well. All right. So anyways, getting back on topic. Spaced repetition. What is it? All right. If you're not familiar with what spaced repetition systems are, here's the definition on Wikipedia. Spaced repetition is a learning technique that incorporates increasing intervals of time between subsequent review of previously learned material. And the increasing intervals of time in between review, that's key. Increasing intervals of time between subsequent review of material in order to exploit the psychological spacing effect. Although the principle is useful in many contexts, spaced repetition is commonly applied in contexts in which a learner must acquire a large number of items and retain them indefinitely in memory. It is therefore well suited for the problem of vocabulary acquisition in the course of second language learning, due to the size of the target language inventory of open class words. So this is coming straight from Wikipedia, all right? And they specifically mention that spaced repetition is uniquely suited for learning large amounts of vocabulary in second language acquisition. All right, so that was a pretty technical term, a pretty technical definition. I'm going to give you more of a layman's definition of what spaced repetition systems are. All right, so a spaced repetition system is usually an app or a website that you're going to go to. And they usually work based off of flashcards, all right? The essential thing in spaced repetition is that you're going to have increasing periods of time in between your reviews. So at first, you're going to be reviewing something very often, and then as you progress through the system, it's going to be increasing, so that by the time you become more advanced, you're going to have several days in between review sessions, and then several weeks, and then several months, because you're learning these words better, and you don't need to review them as often. First of all, that helps in time management, because you just don't have time to review every single one of your words every day. Second of all, it actually helps psychologically to remember these words better. And I want to explain that it is actually more efficient to review your vocabulary words less often than it is to review them every day once you reach a higher level. Okay, at the very beginning, you're going to need to review them every day because you're still building those memories. But once you get them into long-term memory, you don't want to be constantly reviewing them. All right, so the way Memrise, Anki, the spaced repetition system on Link work is they originally introduce you to a small number of words that you're going to be learning. Okay, 5, 10, 15 words. That's pretty typical first day of using a spaced repetition system. The following day, you're going to work on the same words again. Following day, same words again. Then, on day 2, 3, 4, they're going to start adding new words. And once these new words come in, you're going to start memorizing those words every day. But the words that you had already previously been working on, those are going to start being every other day, every 3 days, every 5 days. So you're constantly adding new words to your, to your workload. Okay, constantly adding new words that you're working on every day. But you're also continuing to work on the old words. Okay, and the reason it doesn't become overwhelming by continually adding new words every day, you can imagine how that would add up really quickly, and then all of a sudden you just don't have time to practice them all. But it doesn't work like that, because as you learn one word better and better and better, you review it less and less and less often. Okay. And like I said, not only is that important for time management, because you just don't have enough time to review every single one of your words every single day, but it actually helps you remember the words better. And here's why. If you practice a word every single day, you're going to get into the habit of practicing that one word. You're not going to have to work very hard to remember it, because you just used that word the day before. Okay. It's like there's a quote, I want to say by Teddy Roosevelt, maybe. But I know these quotes often get misattributed to famous characters, famous people. He says, "Nothing worthwhile comes easy." Okay. And that's true with vocabulary learning. You learn better when you have to work for it. Okay. And if I just reviewed my vocabulary word, let's see, what are some of these vocabulary words that I am learning? Le faux problème. Okay. A non-problem. If I just reviewed this word yesterday, it's still fresh in my mind. And in order for me to recall it today, I don't have to work quite as hard to recall it. All right. If it's been a week since I practiced this word, I'm gonna sit there when my flashcard comes up, and I'm gonna have to think to myself, what was that word? And it might take me 10, 15, 20 seconds. Maybe you remember just the first letter. Maybe you remember something that it rhymes with. You remember something about the word, and it's not coming to you, and you have to stop and think. You have to work really hard to recall that word, and then it comes to you. That's exactly where you want to be with reviewing your vocabulary words. Okay? You don't want it to be so hard that you can't remember it, because then you're not really getting any practice. And you also don't want it to be so easy that it just comes to you immediately. You want to be right on that border between the order and the chaos, right? Where it's not too easy, it's not too difficult. You're right in the middle, where you have to work really hard and then you get it. Okay, that's what you want. And spaced repetition systems like Memrise automatically adjust the intervals in between review for each individual word. So if there's a certain word that you're getting wrong every time, it's going to keep showing you that one word over and over and over until you start to get it. Okay. And then once you start to get that word, then it's going to start spacing out the intervals in between your review sessions. All right. Whereas for another word that you just get right every time, it's going to start spacing out in between the reviews. And that's the key. All right. That's what you're really looking for. Anki does the same thing. All right. So I hope I've made myself clear. If there's still any questions about the psychology or the science behind um, what's going on with the spaced repetition systems, just leave me a comment. Let me know. I'll try to answer as well as I can. I also just want to mention the difference between learning in context versus drilling. Spaced repetition is a type of drilling. Okay, it's like memorizing by rote. Okay, you're just putting in work. Okay, you're going to work and you're just putting in the effort and you're just kind of forcing yourself to learn. That's all. That's not necessarily the most efficient way of learning a vocabulary word. Okay, if you're in a situation where you're speaking your target language and a certain word comes up, you don't know it, so you ask the native speaker that you're talking to, and they tell you that word, you've just used that word in a context. Okay, now that's a context-bound word for you, and you're going to have a memory associated with that word. You probably have certain words in your target language where you specifically remember where you were, like when and where you were the first time that you learned this word. Okay, and it just sticks with you. That's going to be a stronger memory than if you're just learning words on Anki or Memrise. Okay. The problem with that, with trying to learn words with that method, is you can't really be intentional about learning new vocabulary. You can't just wake up in the morning and say, all right, I'm going to go have a conversation with someone and I'm going to learn 25 new words in my conversation. You can try to do that. I mean, if you have someone that's willing to do that with you, that can be helpful. And I always recommend experimenting and trying new things. The problem is that it's just difficult to accomplish that kind of stuff when you're having conversations with a real person. It's easy to wake up in the morning and say, all right, I'm going to open up Memrise, or I'm going to open up Anki, or I'm going to open up Link. Well, with Link, it's a little bit more difficult, but say, I'm going to open up Anki and I'm going to learn 25 new words on Anki today. All right, because those words are just, it's just streamlined. It's just efficient. And you can intentionally just put in a certain amount of time every day on your spaced repetition system. You just can't do that as well with conversations with native speakers, and that's totally acknowledging that it's going to form a stronger memory if you're learning these words in context. Hi, Roy. Thanks for joining. It's all right if you're late listening while at work. Okay, don't slack off at work though, but I'm glad you're joining us. So anyways, between the drilling and the context-based learning, I think Link offers a happy medium, okay, where you're going to be reading through authentic material. You're going to be getting regular input. And while these words are coming to you, you save those words as links, if you're familiar with how Link works. And then you use the spaced repetition that's built in. And that's decent. I think Link also has its, I don't want to say flaws, but just Link isn't the perfect system for spaced repetition. It's much more devoted to the input method, which is also great. Not complaining about Link. I think it's my favorite all-around language learning application. But there just is no perfect one-stop shop for language learning. You got to use different methods. You got to experiment with different areas, and you have to use different techniques, and you got to focus on specific areas every once in a while. And that's why I think just putting in the effort and just plowing through on spaced repetition systems, that really is going to be very useful to you. Okay. Now, it's not going to be useful if that's the only thing you do. So I don't want anyone to hear me say that that's what I'm suggesting. Memorize and Anki or any spaced repetition is a piece of the puzzle. Okay. It's like practicing your scales. All right. If you're learning the piano and you just practice scales and arpeggios every day, it's helpful. Okay. But no one learns to play the piano just to play scales. You do it to improve your skills as a piano player. All right. And honestly, if you're trying to learn the piano and you never practice scales and arpeggios, you're not going to be as good of a piano player as you're not going to be as well-rounded. You're going to have a weakness. Okay. And it's the same thing if you never used spaced repetition. Okay. I think if you're not using it, that's going to be a glaring hole in your language learning repertoire. And it's something that's easily fixable. Anki and Memrise are both free. Link is relatively cheap, just $10 a month. You know, that's a very small portion of what I pay in gas every month, or probably what you pay in coffee. So I recommend it. I recommend Link is kind of a more well-balanced between the context learning and the spaced repetition. Memrise and Anki, because you can use other people's decks and just have a streamline of new information every day. Those are going to be very useful ways of getting new words that you might not have any other way of getting exposure to. So if we don't have any other questions or anything, I think I'm going to end the live stream here today. So thanks for those of you guys who have been watching. If you have any other questions, please feel free to leave me comments below. Ask away. I love interacting with you guys, as you know. And if not, we'll talk to you later.